All right, welcome back. We are GAME 2015 in the winter 2019 semester at George Brown, BR Development. We're week 2, and it's part 2 of our broadcast from an intro to Blender perspective. We stopped with a bit of a challenge, make a wall that's 5 cubes across and 3 cubes high, very, very simple. But just to get you to learn the interface. So now, during this time we've been talking, I said, hey, not only just make a cube, but maybe use some other primitives to make a very simple spaceship. This is a really dumb-looking spaceship. I actually made one better this morning. But basically what you can do is you can modify objects, translate them, scale them, all that kind of stuff across different axes, as an example, to create simple things, right, to make your quote-unquote spaceship look a little better. You can actually do some other things as well, like some Boolean operations, which I'll show you later on, to make this thing look a little bit more interesting, right? So again, Shift S and then cursor to center to recenter the cursor to the center of the screen. Shift A to add objects, like for example a cube, right? And then you can translate these objects, S to scale, let's say, and then as you make as you can scale across different axes by S and then the axis, so Z. And then you can combine shapes to make things look like the spaceship that you want. But this is really academic, really easy and all this kind of stuff, and very limiting. So let's get into some more advanced stuff. Not even advanced, let's just say a little bit more in terms of what you can do, more functionality. So Blender allows you to go into something called edit mode. Now it's different than Maya in that it's a different mode altogether. You can't do editing and object moving at the same time. So notice over here, we have our cube that's selected, and I want to do something with this cube. I can press in Tab to go into something called edit mode. When I go into edit mode, the entire object is selected, and it's almost like a exclusive mode. If you've ever done Illustrator or Photoshop or whatever, you can go into only modifying this object. The other objects are not available in this mode. All right, only the object that you've right-clicked and pressed Tab into. Now, if I deselect all by pressing the A key, notice that I can right-click on a vertex, and I can translate just that vertex around. I have way more control this way, where I can translate each vertex around the way I want. And if I want to translate different things, for example, edges, there are some buttons. In edit mode, you can do vertex select mode, you can do edge select mode, and face select mode. These are the 3 things you can modify, just like we did transformation and rotation and scaling in object mode. You have additional things you can do in edit mode, right? So for example, if I want to modify the face, I went to face select mode. I can right click onto the face, and then I can modify that face up and down, or I can click onto edge select mode, and then I can modify that edge only to make my ship look the way I want. Okay, now this is pretty bad if all I can do is this. What about if I can use my hotkeys? So Control Tab allows me to do all that stuff right from here, so I don't have to go into the buttons. Hotkeys are always faster for me. Control Tab into edge select mode, Control Tab into face select mode, Control Tab into vertex select mode. And you can see that I can shift right click to select multiple vertices as an example. And I can also scale vertices, not just move them around. Okay, so that's what edit mode does. One more thing, I'm just going to start up a new project here. Again, I'm going to make a new project. And one more thing is in edit mode, so if I press Tab to get into edit mode, notice that everything is selected, right? If I deselect all, again, I can modify each individual vertice or edge or face, but it'd be great if we can have additional geometry. So if I select all again by pressing A a couple of times, on the left, you can click this option called Subdivide. And what Subdivide does when I click it one time, it actually divides everything by 2. And it gives me a number of cuts as an option on the left. So I can increase the number of cuts a number of times up till 10, which adds a lot of different geometry. What it's actually done is it's divided everything by 10. And every in every direction, every axis, right? That's a lot more geometry than I need, right? Again, I can undo these changes by Control Z, right? So I know there's no subdivision, right? Again, I can select all. Control Z actually undoes the selection too. If I Control Z here, it'll undo my selection, which is kind of a neat thing. And what I want you guys to do now, let's subdivide this thing a few times. So subdivide and then go 1, 2, 3. And now I have some faces here that I can select. I'm going to deselect all by pressing the A key. And you can see now that I can go in here and I can select, if I press Control Tab into Vertex Select Mode, I can select multiple vertices. For example, I want this one and maybe shift right click this one and this one, maybe in this one. And if I did this and kind of brought this up, you get this weird translation here. I can modify all the verts individually like this. Or if I press Control Tab into Face Select Mode, then I can select certain faces. Let's say only these faces. Right? Only these faces. So you can modify your object so it has a little bit more character by using these kinds of editing techniques. Okay, so that's one thing you can do. So you can make your ship have more detail, you know, by modifying some of the objects. You know, let's just move this a little bit differently. And if you're not doing symmetrical modeling, this is great. This is fantastic. If I want to select more than one face at the same time, and I want to use a selection tool, there are two basic selection tools I can use. One of them is Box Select Mode. So if I press B for Box Select Mode and I drag a little box around, I can select multiple vertices or multiple whatever of the thing that I've got selected. So if I press Face Select Mode, and if I use my B for Box Select to select multiple boxes, then I can select multiple faces by left clicking and dragging if I want to do that. And if I want to scale those faces, then I can do weird stuff, right? It's kind of neat. All right, that's one thing you can do. The other selection mode is Circle Select Mode. So if I press C for Circle Select Mode, I have this little circle. And then what that does is it kind of acts like maybe some other programs you've seen where I can circle select the ones I want. When I'm done selecting, I got to press Escape. And that allows me to select only those faces. So maybe I want to translate those faces up or down. Okay? So I can do kind of some stuff like that. So I can change my geometry the way I want this way. And I can also scale in only those faces, right? So B select mode and C select mode. B select is box select, C select is circle select. All right? This only works in edit mode. It will not work in object mode. So object mode is this. When your objects look like this, right? Edit mode, when you click tab, you go into edit mode, you have more detail. You can go and modify each object separately. One of the questions I got this morning was, well, can I add other objects in edit mode? If you do, then your object, whatever it's called, for example, in this case, my object is called cube, if you notice on the inspector. Cube will not really define or describe what your object is then. It'll be something else. It'll be a cube, and inside of there might be other shape as well. And so you'll have multiple shapes inside of your object container. So be careful about that. Objects in Blender are containers of other sub-objects. So example, if you open up this if you expand this, you can see that there's a cube primitive that's inside of this cube object. But I can rename the cube object to whatever I want. For example, Spaceship by double-clicking. Right? And inside there is just a simple cube primitive. But I can add other ones. If I press Shift-A inside of edit mode, Shift-A, and add a sphere, as an example, then now I have both a sphere and a cube inside of my spaceship, right? And you can see that I've got these two objects in here, right? But when I go into tab out, they're one object, even though they're separated. They're separated, but when I translate them, they're one big object, all right? Be careful about this because this may not be what you want, okay? When you make your spaceship.
Can we separate them?
You can. If you go back into edit mode, I believe it's Control and J. If you don't remember, by the way, you can always go into this, right? So I can't remember. And oh, the other thing is, well, how do I select this whole object like this? There's a couple ways to do that. If I only want to select this object but not this one, I could try and do B-select, but then what happens is only going to select the faces that are visible. For example, these faces are not selected, right? You could always go into wireframe mode by pressing the Z key. Z key takes you into wireframe mode, and then if I do the same thing, if I do a B-select with wireframe mode, then I get everything that the wire can see, which is the entire object, right? And then I can press spacebar if I want to separate or split. So if I want to split the object, I press the Y key. So if I can do that, and that's not what I wanted. Let's try that again. Separate is what I really want. Here it is, mesh P. It's the P button. So P, it says what you want. I want to separate my selection, and now it's a different object altogether. Notice that now there's two spaceships, right? They're called the same thing because that's what they were called. So it actually duplicates the object and separates those two primitives from, or any shape you select, from one object to the other. All right, let's go back. So I've got this primitive shape as an example, and I want to try and model a spaceship, but you know what? Modeling in this perspective is pretty ugly, right? Using perspective mode to model, and notice in the top left corner of my screen, I've got perspective mode, right? So perspective mode, what it is I'm using a perspective viewpoint, right? Which means that objects that are closer to me appear bigger, and objects that are farther away appear smaller. But really, I'm using a two-dimensional canvas, and I'm using a projection, right, from 3D to 2D. That's what I'm doing. So I can see what it looks like 3D objects, the illusion of 3D objects on my screen. Okay. But sometimes I want to get into something called orthographic mode. And you can do that by using the numeric keypad on your keyboard. If I press the 5 key on the keyboard, I move from perspective to orthographic. Okay? So what this does is it makes all objects the same size. And it makes it flatter, the whole scene. The other thing is that, trying to do modeling from this perspective is really challenging sometimes. Sometimes we want to only look at things from one perspective, one direction, if you will. So if I want to look at it from the front, I can press the 1 key on the numeric keypad. Please try this. I want to look at the 1 key. I flip to the front perspective. If I want to look at orthographic mode now, I press 5, and you can see that it looks completely flat, right? So I can look at flat ortho mode, right? By the way, for those people who know Maya and Max, this should be very common for you, right? Because we model a lot of times in this perspective, in this view, because it's easier and it's more accurate. Because sometimes we think it's going to look right from a three-dimensional perspective, but then we move things around and we're like, whoa, this is not moved properly. Because our eyes, we think we're modeling in the right way, but we're not. If I want to look at the side view or the right view, I want to click the key. 3 key rotates to the right. 7 key is from the top. And you can't really see a difference because it's a cube right now. So let's change that for really quickly so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go back into perspective mode. I'm going to go into edit mode really quickly, and I'm going to modify the cube so that it looks different. So I'm going to go and subdivide this thing, maybe subdivide it a couple times, right? And now what I'm going to do is just to modify it, I'm going to go Control Tab so you can see this. I'm going to click the faces here, and I'm going to pull them out so you can see that this maybe is the front. I don't know. We'll make these ones kind of the back, kind of a weird shape in the back there, right? This is all in edit mode. And then if I flip it to object mode again, let's take a look. So this is the front view. This is the right view. This is the top view, right? And if I'm going to orthographic mode, it seems that it is flat, which is easier for us to model with because I can adjust the wings, where the positions are, all that stuff according to different sides. So sometimes when we model, actually, oftentimes when we model, I want to limit my perspective to one view, okay? I know in Maya has like a 4-up view. You can also do that in Blender. A lot of times we model from one perspective and it's flip. It's also possible. All right, so challenge number 2, right? Yes? Say that again?
You have like any other way.
Yes, you could do it with, if you don't have the number pad, you can go through your view, And then on the view, it actually changes this right through here. So if you don't have a numeric keypad as a question, can I still change the view? Yes, you can. Here is the front view. And if you go to view, and if you go camera, bottom, you can do the bottom view or whatever. Here's the back view. If you want to do that, back view and front view, you can get to the back view by pressing Control and then 1 on your numeric keypad. So 1, press 1 on the numeric keypad, takes me to my front view. If I press Control 1, my back view. If I want to see the right side, press 3. If you want to press the left, if you want to see the left side, it's Control 3, right? And it'll show you different views. All right, so for you guys now, challenge number 2. Take that model, that spaceship, and make it, use all the tools I've just shown you, including editing, and make your spaceship as accurate as possible. One more thing before I let you go. What about if you wanted to change the quote-unquote color of an object? Well, here's what I want to tell you about color. Color is not really a color per se. What we're doing is we're modifying the shader that's been applied to the object, the shader program, okay? So let's talk about shaders for a second. On the right, you can see that there is this editor, right? This inspector, right? And you have a bunch of tabs. 2 things. In the scene mode, which is the third one from the left, we want to change our preset units from Blender units to meters. Let's change that to meters. Because in Unity requires meters. So we do this in the third tab on the right. We want to change the units to meters. By the way, by default, Maya is meters, right? I think 3D Studio Max is too. But in Blender, it's Blender units, which is some arbitrary number, okay? So that's the first thing we want to do. Then the next thing we want to do is I want to color this shape something, but I'm not really coloring it. I'm applying a shader. By default, all objects have a default material. If I click on the 4th tab from the right, the little circle, right? You can see that there is a preview of what it looks like. The material is called material. Let's name this green for now. So I'm going to double click onto it and go green. And if you go to your diffuse property, which is right here, diffuse channel, click on this. It'll bring up a little color wheel, and you can drag this to green. So it'll look green, the whole object though, yeah? Now the whole object is green, yay. But what about if I wanted to make part of it red, like the engines? I want to make the engines red. How do I do that? Well, I need to define another material, right? So I can do that by going here, clicking the plus button, and changing this, adding a new, this adds a new slot. I'm going to click new, and I can double click on the material to make it red, to call it red, and then click in the diffuse area to make it red by using the, just dragging in this color wheel again. Now you see I have 2 materials, one green and one red. But red's not showing up here. It's not showing up because the material has not been applied to any of the faces of the model. So the way we do that is we go into edit mode, like so. Let's say I'm going to go into the back, go into edit mode. I'm going to select those faces that are part of my engine. I'm going to select the new material that I want right here, the red material, and click Assign. And now I have red engines. Okay, so again, process is, let's add another material. We'll do that one more time. Let's add another material. Let's make it, I click the plus button, I've got a slot. I add a new material. We're going to call this material blue. Here's blue. And we're going to change the diffuse quality to make it blue. Let's make it light blue. There we go. There's blue. But it's not on anything, right? So I got to go into edit mode, select areas. Let's say this is my cockpit up here. So I'm going to select these 2 faces and then go to blue and click Assign. And now those faces are blue. Okay? Pretty simple. Guys, I've recorded this, so worst case scenario, if you didn't get it, you can see it in the recording. Yes?
Separate colors for every...
No, because you can reuse the colors. They're materials, just like they were being Unity. If I make a material in Unity, I can reuse those materials over and over again, yeah? Same thing here. So let's suppose I want to use green in another shape. Let's go back out to, tab out to object mode, scroll out, go back into perspective mode, and let's add in some kind of sphere, right? So Shift A, I want to add a new sphere. And I want this sphere. I want this sphere here to have a red color, right? So notice that I can add a new material. That's one option. Or I can just select one that already exists, like this. Red. And now it's red. Okay? Okay, one more thing. I'm going to let you go and do your spaceship, which for your spaceship, I've created a discussion board up on Blackboard for your participation marks for today. What I want you to do is I want you to create your spaceship, take some screenshots of your spaceship from a couple of perspectives so I can see what it looks like. And I want you to upload them in a new thread on the discussion. And I'm going to show you the discussion. There's already some threads from this morning's class you can see there up on Blackboard. But let me show you one more thing. I'm going to make a new file one more time. Here we go. Let's suppose that I want to use a mirror. So that way I want to do everything on the right. I want to happen on the left. I want to make something more organic looking or symmetrical, right? Because it's a pain in the ass for you to try and do things symmetrically on both sides. You want sometimes to make things exactly symmetrical. The way to do that, of course, is to tab into edit mode. I can subdivide this shape just like before. So let's say subdivide. Let's subdivide it a few times. By the way, please don't subdivide it and then subdivide it again, because if you keep subdividing it, it'll create a crazy amount of subdivisions. Example, one more, just a warning. Here's the warning. I make 10 subdivisions, right? I deselect all, and then I click subdivision again, right? And then I do more subdivisions. Please don't do this. This is crazy. It will crash your system eventually with enough subdivisions, right? Because it takes memory. Okay, so we don't want this to happen. But what we do want, we want only a few subdivisions. So let's just make a few subdivisions like before. Let's make one more. Typically, you want an even number, 3 on one side, let's say, and 3 on the other. I want to move into front view, right? I want to go into orthographic mode. I want to go into wireframe and deselect all. And now you see that I have a wireframe with some objects that I can see throughout. This is what it looks like. This is what the wireframe. I went through wireframe with the Z key. Remember that? So front view. And now I'm going to use B select to select half of the object and delete it. So B select mode, select half of the object, right? You can see that half the object is selected, right? Wait, I'll show you. And then if I press X, I can delete different things, faces, edges, or verts. If I delete the verts, it'll be enough. Watch, right? Now I have an object that looks like this, right? Half a box, right? Half a box. And if I look at it from the front again, and I want to mirror on the other side, I can do a modifier. There's a little wrench on the right-hand side of your screen, and it allows you to add modifiers. You can add a mirror modifier, which actually you can mirror across the x-axis, the y-axis, or the z-axis, or all three, right? And when you do that, you can see that whatever I do on the right now, I have control over the right, but I don't have control over the left because the left is just a mirror. So I can do something that looks like this. You can see that whatever I do on this side happens on the left side, right? So I can make something more symmetrical if I really want to, right? Okay, symmetrical modeling. That's enough for me. I'm going to stop right now, and I want you guys to make your spaceship. Right now we're sitting at 11:16. I'm going to give you 14 minutes to make your spaceship as much as possible and upload it to the Blackboard discussion group, right? And then I'm going to talk about your project, okay? You can keep working on it all day, but I want to give you 14 minutes in class where I can go around and help you out, okay? And then we'll continue recording on Thursday.
Discussion board screenshots to do
Tonight at midnight, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's for participation marks.
How can we use one material for many objects? So like, how we choose a new object, it just doesn't show me the material.
Give me a second, I'll come around. One material for many objects, is that what you said? Yeah, I'll show you in a second. All right, that's it. We'll come back on Thursday with more of a lecture based on VR. And remember that these classes, we're going to do some part like this, but as we progress through the semester, I'm not going to do more Blender like this. It's going to be more of, here's some VR stuff. And by the way, here's some class time for you to work with your groups to actually work on the project, okay? So this is just in the beginning. I'll meet you guys back on Thursday. For the people that are here, I'm going to come around and see what your spaceship's looking like.